You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
On August 29, 2021, ESPN aired a high school football game between IMG Academy and Bishop Sycamore at Tom Benson Stadium in Canton, Ohio. The game was the finale of ESPN's annual high school kickoff series. IMG Academy is located in Bradenton, Florida, and is well known as a breeding ground for world-class athletes, consistently producing professionals in many different sports. Every year, dozens of IMG football players are given Division I scholarships, and many go on to become stars in the NFL. Notable examples include Evan Neal, Greg Newsome, DJ Turner, and more. Bishop Sycamore, on the other hand, was purported to be the IMG Academy of the Midwest. Based in Columbus, Ohio, players were recruited with the promise of being able to practice at Ohio State's football facilities. The Centurions were said to have multiple players who had received interest from Division I programs. Now, IMG Academy is no stranger to completely demolishing their opponents. They're a perennial high school football powerhouse after all, but this game seemed a bit different. It was clear from the beginning that this was no ordinary blowout. As the game continued, the announcers began to question out loud the legitimacy of Bishop Sycamore. Play-by-play announcer Anish Shroff actually questioned how the Centurions were even scheduled to play IMG in the first place. He said that it was such a brutal beatdown that he was getting worried about the health and safety of the Bishop Sycamore players. His partner, color commentator Tom Luganbill, agreed, saying he believed the game was getting dangerous. The two admitted live on air that they couldn't even confirm that anything they were told about the school was even accurate or true. IMG Academy ended up winning 58-0, but it was clear they were taking it easy on the hapless Centurions pretty much after the first quarter, when they had already built a 23-0 lead. It became clear to pretty much anyone watching that this was not a fair fight. IMG looked like the Kansas City Chiefs playing a team of 10-year-olds. So who is or was Bishop Sycamore? How did they get a game televised on ESPN? And what happened afterwards? Well, get ready to follow me down the rabbit hole because this story goes so hard. Bishop Sycamore actually didn't even start out as Bishop Sycamore. In 2018, the school, and I say school in quotations because, as you'll come to learn, it was a school in name only, was founded as Christians of Faith Academy, also known as COF Academy. It was rife with problems though. For one, COF scheduled some of the toughest competition in the state of Ohio, despite not really having the talent on their roster to hang with the powerhouses that they were playing. Although not the founder of COF, a man named Roy Johnson became the face and leader of the program as their head coach, telling people that the school was a private online Christian academy with ties to the 3rd District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I hope I said that right. Episcopal, is that how you say it? Man, why can't churches just have normal names like Jesus Church? That's simple, easy to say. Get a better name. We're just gonna call it AME for short. Roy professed his faith and his mission to give underprivileged kids a chance to play Division I football and gain a higher education. He also told media the school was planning construction of a full-on campus in Northeast Columbus. But the issues started to arise quickly. Just 4 games into COF's schedule, the church they had been so publicly affiliated with, AME, denied their affiliation with COF. In fact, an attorney for the church named Arthur Harmon denied that Roy Johnson had ever even contacted the church. The attorney went on to state that the church had sent COF a cease and desist letter. However, it should be noted that documents obtained by USA Today seem to suggest that the church was involved in the creation of COF and even helped fund it, but the church continued to deny any association whatsoever with COF. Whatever the case, AME's public denial did not bode well for COF, and it caused a domino effect for other problems to come. By late September, just about halfway through the regular season, the OHSAA said that they could not verify that classes were even taking place at COF. In other words, they called the COF a fake school. And to that end, the OHSAA made a determination that games against COF would not count towards qualification for the Ohio State football playoffs. A few opponents canceled their games against COF, including none other than IMG Academy. They were able to find some replacement opponents, but the program was struggling, that much was clear. And far from the luxury dorms that were promised to parents, Roy Johnson had his players holed up in motels. And instead of a practice facility, they did drills at local parks. COF was a mess. Roy Johnson was in over his head, and it got worse. Allegedly, the feds came in to investigate the legitimacy of this operation, and accusations of fraud were made, as well as use of counterfeit currency, credit and debit card fraud, and other potential crimes. But I will note that this is Roy's retelling of events, and based on his track record, honesty isn't exactly a quality he's known for. Regardless, it seems as though Roy Johnson was able to wriggle his way out of facing any serious criminal punishment, at least this time around. But even still, the fate of COF was sealed and they were forced to shut down, or more accurately, rebrand, because they returned the following season in 2019 as Bishop Sycamore and followed the same game plan as before. They promised recruits luxury amenities and a chance to get noticed by top Division I programs. They even brought brochures to parents and had smooth-talking recruiters convince the players' families that they had a plan. But the reality was far more grim. As parents began sending their kids to Bishop Sycamore, they trusted their children's educational and athletic futures to Roy Johnson, who seemed very trustworthy at first. But when the athletes arrived in Columbus, the realization set in that this might not exactly have been what was promised. Just like before, Roy Johnson had the team holed up in dingy motels, and not only was there no campus, but there was no learning and no education to speak of. And the housing situation was getting even more dire. Roy Johnson was writing the motel bad checks and just hoping every day when he woke up that his team wasn't going to get evicted. Players were crammed into rooms and many kids had to sleep on the floor. And I shouldn't necessarily say kids, because only some of them were. The team had several players ranging from 19 to 21 years old, and some of them reportedly were even junior college players. And as for practicing at Ohio State's football facilities, they practiced at Ohio State alright, but at a campus apartment complex that they ran drills at. Bishop Sycamore started out with a full staff, a coach at every position, but when Roy Johnson failed to pay the coaches, they quit, and by October only 2 coaches remained, and a mom of one of the players volunteered to help. Roy Johnson instructed his players to lie to their parents about the education they were receiving. Despite all the problems going on off the field, Bishop Sycamore actually wasn't completely horrible on the field. They went 4-5 in 2019, and considering the chaos going on, almost going 500 is pretty respectable. The team went winless in 2020, but managed to schedule several football powerhouses in the midst of a global health issue. I can't say the actual thing, we're on YouTube. But Bishop Sycamore would take advantage of games cancelled due to the Modelo virus, and offered to be a filler opponent. Bishop Sycamore surprisingly returned in 2021, and prior to taking on IMG that fateful night, they had already played twice in August, losing 38-0 to Archbishop Hoban High School on August 19th, and losing again by a score of 19-7 to Storax High School on August 27th. Keen listeners might observe something a little strange about the date of the latter, as it is just a mere 2 days before they played IMG. Obviously, if you know anything about football, you know that it is rare to see a team play more than once in a 7-day period, let alone 2 games in 3 days. So here it is important to note that ESPN contracts a third party called Paragon Marketing to help facilitate the scheduling of high school athletic events that get aired on ESPN. Paragon president Rashid Ghazi has said that both he and his company believed Bishop Sycamore had 2 different squads, and that the squad that played 2 days prior was not the same that was scheduled to face IMG on the 29th. However dubious this claim might be by Ghazi, nonetheless he was mistaken, as it was the same group that played in both contests. Footage of both games proves that, not to mention Roy Johnson has outright admitted it. But somehow it gets even worse. Many players on Bishop Sycamore's team played both offense and defense, which isn't uncommon for high school, but only having 1 day of rest meant the likelihood of injuries was extremely high. And as previously mentioned, only 2 coaches were even on the staff, and that meant no athletic trainers, which means that injuries were not dealt with properly. The high school I went to was in a small town in rural Utah, and even my team had athletic trainers available, So for this to not be the case for a team that played on ESPN is extremely alarming. A few Bishop Sycamore players left the IMG game with injuries, including their starting quarterback Trillian Harris. Another thing some eagle-eyed viewers of the game might have noticed is that Bishop Sycamore had mismatched helmets, and seemingly not enough helmets for the entire team. And this was likely because the GoFundMe they had set up to raise money for the equipment, traveling costs and meals, failed to even raise $200. A quick look at the GoFundMe's description, and it looks like it was written by a chimp with dyslexia, as it is rife with run-on sentences and grammatical errors. And obviously that money was needed because they didn't have the funds for 2 sets of jerseys, wearing home black jerseys against Stowe Rocks, despite the fact that they were on the road and Stowe Rocks was also wearing black home jerseys, making it a nightmare for anyone trying to watch the game without having a brain aneurysm. And there were some plays where 2 players with the same number were out there at once. So obviously this begs the question, how in the world, with all these red flags waving, did this team, which was run by a bumbling idiot like Roy Johnson, manage to trick ESPN? Well, as previously mentioned, ESPN outsources its scheduling of high school events to Paragon, and ESPN has since said that they repeatedly told Paragon that Bishop Sycamore was not legit because none of their staff could verify any information about the roster. Bishop Sycamore just gave ESPN a sheet of paper with names listed and said that multiple players had offers from D1 programs. None of the names that Bishop Sycamore listed were on any reputable recruiting sites such as 247 Sports or Max Preps. And so, to clear things up, ESPN attempted to get Roy Johnson on a conference call, but he stood them up, which caused even more concern for ESPN. But regardless of who's at fault for letting this happen, be it ESPN or Paragon, the game still took place, and it didn't take very long for ESPN to realize just how badly they'd been scammed.
That Trillian Harris will do the punting. He's the quarterback as well. And the kick is blocked out of the end zone. That's a safety. Pittsburgh, Charles Woodson, Drew Pearson. Long time coming for Pearson. This one is tipped and intercepted by IMG. Trayvon Howard. Punishing style to his running.
Yeah, he runs angry.
Sycamore told us they had a number of Division I prospects on their roster. To be frank, a lot of that we could not verify. And
Correct.
They did not show up in our database. They did not show up in the databases of other recruiting services. So it's okay. If that's what you're telling us, fine. That's how we take it in. From what we've seen so far, this is not a fair fight. And there's got to be a point now, Luke's, where you do worry about health and safety.
Yeah, I already am worried about it. I think it's this could potentially be dangerous.
A Twitter account named Prep Gridiron Logistics started firing off tweets following the game, even claiming in one of them that Bishop Sycamore has 2 teams. This next part is pretty confusing, so I'll do my best to explain it. Paragon works with PGL, Prep Gridiron Logistics, but they said that PGL doesn't organize games, but rather helps find matchups for nationally televised games, and that they set up the IMG and Bishop Sycamore game back in May. To me, this kind of just seems like a game of hot potato with everyone shifting the blame to someone else. But in any case, Paragon stated that they had no plans to work with Bishop Sycamore in the future. Prep Gridiron Logistic continued to simp for Bishop Sycamore on Twitter for some reason, who knows why. Meanwhile, the story went viral and was the talk of the sports world for the first couple weeks of September of 2021. In the aftermath, it was revealed that Roy Johnson allegedly got his plays from Madden and had an active arrest warrant for fraudulent misrepresentation, conversion, and unjust enrichment, which are just legal terms for con man. He was also sued by ARN Hospitality back in 2019, who claimed he owed them over $110,000 for not paying the bill of a hotel where players were housed. He also had more lawsuits brought against him, notably by a helmet manufacturing company, and it was even alleged that he took out a $100,000 loan but never repaid the bank, which is First Merchants Bank. Why they decided to approve a loan of this magnitude for this guy, I will never understand. And it's not like they wouldn't have known who he is if they just looked up his name. An article published as early as 2018 shows how duplicitous Johnson can be. An owner of a paintball park in Columbus alleged that Johnson brought his team in for a bonding activity, and they shot paintballs and then left without paying. The team racked up a bill of over $1,000, and Johnson left a credit card, but the card declined, and he assured the owner somebody else would come by later that day to pay, but no one ever did. Roy Johnson was fired on August 31st, with founder Andre Pearson taking over coaching duties, trying desperately to convince everyone that everything was legitimate. A guy named Tyron Jackson was named head coach, and Jackson immediately destroyed any possible credibility they might have had, telling the local NBC affiliate in Columbus that they weren't even a school. He said, quote, "We do not offer curriculum. We are not a school. That's not what Bishop Sycamore is, and I think that's what the biggest misconception about us was, and that was our fault, because that was a mistake on paperwork." And just looking at this Tyron Jackson fellow, he looks just as shady, if not more shady, than the man who came before him. Although we do appreciate the fact he's a Juice WRLD fan. W. Riz, my good man. Once this news came out about them admitting that they weren't even a real school, several of their opponents canceled games against Bishop Sycamore, and the Roman Catholic Church branch in Columbus came out and said that there was no bishop ever named Sycamore. Even the Catholic Church was dunking on these guys. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine announced that the Ohio Department of Education would be opening an investigation into Bishop Sycamore's operations. This prompted the 3 remaining schools that didn't cancel their games against Bishop Sycamore to finally do so. It also came as no surprise that when the Ohio Department of Education released the findings of their investigation, the report said that Bishop Sycamore definitely was not providing any education whatsoever, and they turned their findings over to the Ohio Attorney General for further legal action. Roy Johnson later filed for bankruptcy, and in 2023, Bishop Sycamore, by some miracle, decided to try to make a comeback. They scheduled a game against Life Christian Academy on November 9th, 2023, to be played on the campus of Virginia State University. And surprise, surprise, Bishop Sycamore's biggest simp, Prep Gridiron Logistic, is who set the game up. Can we be sure at this point that PGL isn't just Roy Johnson on a burner account? On November 8th, 2023, a day before the matchup, it was announced that the game had been cancelled due to lack of equipment. And that seems to be the rattle of death for old Bishop Sycamore, as they have not attempted another scam since then. Guys, this story went so much deeper than I originally thought. When it first happened, I only knew the surface level stuff, and I thought it was just kind of a funny meme type story. I also thought it was hilarious that ESPN had been tricked by a fake high school. But this is just a classic tale of a scammer who got a little too high on his own shit, and it backfired in a big way. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please show me by leaving a like. If you disliked it, leave a dislike. But either way, comment for the algorithm. Peace out.
I can never ever find the right words, and there's no way this is real life. There's no telling you're the right girl, so I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right.